just want to say a massive thank you to Rick Perez, who is today's guest on Back with a Bang podcast. He's been in a lot of great films, but recently Cobra Kai, one of my favourite series and will be for a long time. But if you just want to check his cameo out at Rick Perez, he can do you a good shout out or birthday message or whatever for a brilliant price. So check him out. And again, a huge thank you to you, Rick.
Hi, I'm Charlie, the host of the Back with a Bang podcast, and I'm honoured to say in the 10th episode we had TV and film actor Rick Perez. Rick was recently in the recent season of Cobra Kai season 3, so you can see why that means so much to have him on. Also, he's been in Ozark, Mile 22, The Resident, and so many other great projects and shows and movies and stuff like that. He really is an actor on the rise and a really great, down-to-earth, humble guy, and honestly, I've had such a good time. And if you just do me a massive favour as well, check out his IMDb page, Rick Perez. Also, if you want a personalised message from Rick, maybe doing the Miyagi crap line he said in Cobra Kai, check him out on Cameo. Great price for a great personalised message, honestly. And remember, reap what you sow. Cheers, Rick.
Right, welcome back to Back with a Bang. Your host, Charlie Walden, co-host Jack Duly. I'm honoured to be joined today by TV actor and film actor Rick Perez. Rick, I'm honoured to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm humbled. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me in your podcast.
No problem at all. How you doing? How you doing first off, Rick?
Doing great. Staying healthy. Staying quarantined for in between projects, but I can't complain. We've been spared, if you will, here where I live. So thank God. I know of a lot of people have been affected by it, but good, bad stories you hear out there, but I'm just waiting for the whole world to come back together, stronger.
Yeah, great news.
Yeah, man.
What age? I'm curious to know. What age did you know you wanted to be an actor? When did you get into it?
That's a good question. And let's go back to the genesis of it all. When I was about 5 years old, my father took me to see my first movie in Manhattan, in New York. Some movie that I don't know if it got a lot of notoriety called Star Wars in 1977, man. My first movie, it was amazing. And just being in the audience, one of the first people to see it back then, as a kid, I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I was just looking around at just everybody being amazed watching this. Are you guys Star Wars fans?
I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Dude,
My dad is, though. Got all the figures and collectibles, and it's crazy. Yeah.
Same here, man. I collected those things for years, and when I saw, just people's just the way the movie affected them, and just looking at everybody's face, I said, man, I told my father, I said, I would love to do that one day. And then things happen in life. You go through life. You get jobs. You get educated, and boom, you wind up in Atlanta, Georgia, like I did. And I saw a lot of movies filming here in Atlanta, and I told my wife, oh my gosh. There's Jason Bateman from Ozark. I don't know if you guys watch Ozark on Netflix.
I've heard
Big
of it,
show.
yeah.
And I said, oh my gosh, there he is. And he kind of saw me. He heard me from my car, and he kind of ditched back into his trailer. But I get nerded out too, and like everybody else when you see these stars. But then I said, I would love to get out there and just do the same thing, just work in the movies at some point. So I signed up to be an extra, a background extra, and I networked with a lot of people, and thank goodness I just found myself in a position that they gave me an opportunity to do more and more roles. And then you get a speaking role here and there. And then I get landed with an agent, and then I'm manager, and now I'm on Cobra Kai. So it was kind of crazy, man.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, overall made you get into it? Would you say it was Star Wars? Was there a specific actor in Star Wars, would you say, that you looked at and thought, I want to be like that guy. I want to follow in the footsteps of that guy?
Well, you know what? Harrison Ford, to be honest with you. I followed him throughout his career. After that, I mean, Indiana Jones, some of my favorite movies of all time. And then I like I'm at my age, you got to get a little older. You look at different projects like the Godfather Trilogy. I was a huge fan of the Godfather, still am. I watch it. I consider it like a master class. I go to school and I go into my theater and I watch movies and just pick apart the way actors do their roles. And again, making it my own, just trying to picture myself there. How would I deliver that line differently? And I do that with a lot of different movies. Godfather series, Indiana Jones. I like watching Star Wars, The Sopranos on HBO, an old series that, again, some of the great actors that were part of that project. And it's just surreal, man, just being part of this industry. I've met a lot of the same stars and people that I admire to this day, and I've had opportunities to work with them. and to speak with them one-on-one, and just it's just been an amazing experience overall.
Yeah.
Great.
For you, right? You mentioned Star Wars, and you're talking about the Godfather trilogies. They're sort of action and sci-fi. For you, what is your favorite genre of film? Let's go with to watch, and then all in all, what would you say is your favorite genre?
That's a great question, Jack. I'd say at where I'm at now, I'd say more of like the Godfather, Sopranos type of real, really gritty type of, series or movies. Breaking Bad, I'm a big fan of also on AMC. But those type of projects, I can picture myself in there. I can see how the actors evolve, the story arcs. But there are times, again, I like my Avengers. I like to watch my Star Wars movies and do my own fan theories and how the direction is going to go. And then I like The Walking Dead. So I like a whole host of different genres, but I find myself gravitating more towards the real gritty dramas, the thrillers. And, as an artist, I try to, again, put myself in there so that if I am given an opportunity to either become part of that project or something like it, I'll be prepared, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
What is
sure.
it about them films that you think? Is it the sort of the action and suspense, or is it like you say you can picture yourself in them films, or just what is it about them that makes them your favorite genre?
Well, that's another good question. I find compelled to the story arcs. Sometimes you don't always get to see everything about the character, and you love. I love the anti-hero. I'm part of that fandom now. I love the bad guy. I like rooting for the bad guys. I find myself on that side of the spectrum a lot in what I do. But at the same time, I love to see that road to redemption that you see play out in a lot of movies and shows nowadays. I like to see the person who had a backstory, and that's so intriguing. We're seeing that in Cobra Kai with Sensei Kreese, and you see that with a whole host of other characters. Even going back to Star Wars, you're seeing prequels now. What made these characters who they are, and what you love to hate and hate to love about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
You
for
literally
sure.
stole the words out of my mouth there when you was talking about Kreese. So what
Yeah.
I was just about to say, you see Kreese as this bad guy, but then when you see the backstory in season 3, you sort of see why he is how he is. And I can sort of link that to if you've seen the Halloween films with Michael Myers. I know it's a bit different because obviously he's a serial killer, but you see him as his past and how he's been mistreated. And I'm not saying you feel sorry for him because he's murdered a lot of people, but you do sort of feel like that. And like you mentioned about Kreese, that just summed it up really with what
I
you said
agree.
there.
You see some fall victim, like you mentioned, Mike Myers. Now the Rob Zombie trilogy, where he went with it, he was a child who was abused and what have you. Yes, so then you see the root there. He fleshed it out differently from the original how Carpenter did his. Again, both geniuses in their own right, of course. But yeah, every person, whether there be a hero or a villain, they had a backstory and what got them to that point. And we saw in Cobra Kai, not to digress a little bit, but then you see Hawk. He was bullied, and then he became a bad guy. Now going back and flipping the script and going back to the good side. Who knows how it's going to play out at the end of this whole story? But I'm sure the big three know exactly what they're doing. Because I'm a fan too. I was a fan before I got cast for the show. That's a great writing behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Just to go back to a little bit of backstories with Star Wars. Have you watched The Mandalorian?
Oh, absolutely, big fan. Oh.
That's a great show as well. For that was well like done with Boba Fett and the Mando himself. The way they've done that is brilliant as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember in what year was it when Return of the Jedi came out? Early 80s, 84, 84. I think it was like 83, 84, if I'm not mistaken. My years might be off. But when Boba Fett gets eaten by that, right, and he was like, oh, he's dead. That was quick. As a kid growing up with that, I was like, man, they really wasted that character. They could have done so much more with that. And for years, we've been hearing rumors that they may do a backstory with Boba Fett and Mandalorian, and finally came to fruition, and look at it. It's a hit. What a great show. Gosh, Jon Favreau, what a genius.
And great homage as well to Luke Skywalker at the end.
Indeed. That really, as a fan of the original, and again, seeing how it kind of went when Disney bought the rights to Lucasfilm, it kind of, I had my disappointed feelings, just like a lot of fans did, and how they did with Luke Skywalker's character. But now I think that Jon Favreau's vision, it really brought a lot of us back into the fold and how we felt originally about the Star Wars shows. Again, we're our toughest critics, being actors as well. We're tough critics on stuff, but we always try to give things a chance, see how how it evolves, the storylines and plots. But man, did they knock a grand slam with that one. That was the best ending to that series. I mean, if they ended it right there, I'd be totally fine. But I mean, I can't wait to see what the future has in store for that show.
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you think that's a route now that many of these like franchises can go down with like series and stuff? So you've seen, I don't know if you watched Harry Potter before, but Harry Potter are now talking about a TV series. Do you think it can work for most of these, or do you got to be selecting which ones you do decide to expand on?
That's a great one. You mean me as an actor, as an artist? Right? Okay. Well, it is true. You at some point you have to be somewhat selective, but every actor will tell you the same thing, no matter if they're an A-lister or an E-lister. You don't always find yourself in certain situations by choice. Sometimes management sees you in a certain area and they try to place you in that, and you never know. You may fight it, and then I see myself as a more serious actor, more of a gritty actor. But then who knows? I could be I have a comedic side as well, but nobody's really seen that, and maybe that may be my path down the road. Who's to know? But I do. You have to be somewhat selective as to the projects you adhere to. You can't just take on everything. But again, it's like a great. What do you guys like to eat? What's your favorite food?
Pizza.
Pizza. Okay.
Pizza, yeah.
All right. So let me ask you: a cheese pizza. Everybody agrees, cheese pizza. But some people like sausage. Some people like meatballs. So the ingredients you put into that is going to make the final product, right? Now, if I throw an anchovy in there, some people are like, "Oh gosh," And that's how we are as artists. What we put into it, the ingredients we put into ourselves as artists, it's what's going to be the end result and how we are, I guess, viewed by the viewer. And again, we're nothing without you guys. The shows that we are a part of, these projects are great, but the viewers, we all are fans of certain shows and what have you. If we don't bring our A game, but if the content we bring is not part of that final project, the ingredient we're talking about, going back to that, it's not going to come out very good, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We have to be somewhat selective.
Yeah, definitely. Just on a film you worked on, Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg. And what was it like working with someone like Mark Wahlberg? And you played the analyst in that film. It was a great film. I love that film. But what was it like working on that film? That was one of my first.
Man, that was surreal. I'll tell you, Peter Berg, who was a director, he's done a million different, great movies and shows. I tip my hat to him. He gave me my first speaking role, which didn't show up in the movie because that's what happens many times. They get edited out. But I was a background featured extra in that, one of my first ones. And you only see me quickly on the screen. But the original scene that was cut out, we all were kind of talking about the cesium, the poison that the terrorists were looking to put out there. And working with such consummate actors. That scene with Mark Wahlberg, Ronda Rousey, Lauren Cohen. You see that table that we were at in the headquarters there. It was the most surreal moment for me. I went home and I told my family, I cannot believe Mark Wahlberg spit on my face. It was crazy because we had some moments that they're right on top of you, and you feel the energy, and you're talking about getting nerded out, and like a fan like you guys in this scene. And Peter Berg says, "You, come on, you're in the big shot." I'm like, okay, put on your game face, get in there. And they're throwing you a line in there to speak with the rest of the group. And I'm like, oh my God, there's Mark Wahlberg. There's Ronda Rousey. We're right there on top. Talking about a master class just early on, before I even got signed by any agents or done really of anything. That was the most surreal moment working with these guys. Because you know what? There's reasons why they're stars. There's a reason why there's people that are athletes that are getting paid millions of dollars. They have true talent. Mark's one of them. These guys, incredible. Their minds, the way they bring out their characters, they own those characters. They know how to memorize lines like no one else. These guys are consummate professionals. And to have that first moment early on in my career was just an unreal moment, man. I can't even describe it. I hope I described it like I try to bring you in there. You can picture yourself there with me. But it's really short on really describing the entire experience. It was incredible.
Would you say that project's the one that maybe took your career to the next stage, would you say?
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, indeed, because that agency I was with, that they do a lot of background work. They choose people, and again, they're trying to select people that are now gaining traction, and then they'll put you into other scenes, and that's kind of how it works in this business. And you network with people as well. People like to work with people they like and they enjoy, and they get through the day. A lot of these days are 12 hours or more on set, and we're working nights and weekends, and they want to get through them. And if they can work with people that get them through that, they're tired too, like everybody else. They're people too. And I found myself working with more and more people, networking, getting to know them. And they're like, hey, let's bring on Rick on this project and this one. And I started building that resume slowly, but I started as a background extra. And I did it purposely because I wanted to learn stage direction. You need to know when they're talking to you and you're understanding, because they have, acronyms and all these different things that you have to kind of understand and learn. And you got to fake the funk sometimes, but then you got to hit the ground running, because if not, there's a million of other people looking to even be on set, carrying a cup of coffee for someone. That's how it is. So I've been really lucky.
It's sort of a cliche, isn't it? Where it's like not what you know, it's sort of who you know again in that sort of situation, isn't it?
Indeed. That is very helpful. But it depends also how you comport yourself, because a lot of people, they get a little crazy out of hand. And I've seen it oftentimes that they aren't called back to projects because of maybe behavior or the way they they comport themselves in that scenario. But you just got to go with it and just learn. And we're constantly evolving as artists. A lot of my other active friends can say the same thing. You're constantly evolving. You're never the same person you were when you start. I look at my auditions from early on, and I look at myself now. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I don't get embarrassed by looking at them, but I see, wow, I have evolved. And you have to change, because if you're not changing, you're going to die as an actor. You're not going to get any work. You have to constantly change and flip the script. Not saying you're using Hawk's words, but it's true. You got to flip the script. You have to change it a little bit. And I've known that many actors who have really gone far in this business sometimes even take that step out, a leap of faith, and try something different. Because every time you do an audition, it should never be the same. You shouldn't come out as robotic. You shouldn't come. Sometimes you have to be different in the eyes of a casting director. When they're picking people, they know anybody could just read lines off of a page. But are you real? Is that who you are plus who they think that character is? And you're making a blend of it, but you're putting in that inflection that they're looking for. And you sometimes have to read it a little off key. And sometimes if you stutter, that's a natural stutter. They like that too. Because if you're just sounding just robotic and monotone, they can get anybody to do that, right? So they want to be able to get the true, authentic emotions from that actor, because that at the end is going to grab the audience, right? We all want to see great content, great movies. But if the guy flubs his lines or he looks kind of like boring, you're not going to want to watch the show, right? So yeah. I think that's kind of, if that makes sense, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say is one of the biggest changes you've made when you've been critiquing yourself to improve as an actor?
Stop memorizing lines. And sometimes you have to read in between the lines and just, and I've told this many times in my family. I do a lot of auditions here with my own family, and they're my toughest critics. Sometimes just be you. When you're delivering these lines, sometimes, okay, if you didn't say and you said but instead of and, you're not going to really offend the writer too much, because most of the time you're in front of a casting director. They're not the ones writing it, but they want to be able to see that you can, with that same sort of energy, whatever the scene calls for, you're giving those lines. And it may not be verbatim, but it sounds real, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times we don't speak the way we read, right? We speak differently. And sometimes we're corrected because somebody's like, no, I didn't write it. Like if you're reading a book word for word, no, that's not how it's written. But the way you speak will come out differently. And that inflection is what grabs you in this business in front of a casting director. They want to be able to see you in there somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm constantly critiquing that about myself.
Definitely. You mentioned with auditions and stuff like that. Is there any nerves when you're going in there? Like I know myself when I'm doing like interviews and stuff, like I'm always very, very nervous going into it. When I'm doing it, it's like sort of calm. I'm doing what I like. Is it a similar sort of situation? Is there nerves before, but when you get into it, it's sort of, this is what I'm best at. This is what I love to do.
Sometimes, but jitters are part of the game. Everybody, and I've heard it in many interviews from, like I said, the E-listers all the way to the A-listers. You always get a little nervous because there's a lot in at stake. You don't know if that could be the next Academy Award-winning movie that you're part of, and you don't want to blow it. So there's always something in the back of your head that's like, oh man. But the problem, and a lot of my actor friends that I do work with, when we call it sparring, when we do audition reads for each other at times, you get in your own head is your worst enemy. Sometimes you can't fear, just go out there and just do it. And many times when we do these auditions, and we do hundreds and hundreds of auditions over a course of months, the hardest part with this is to wrap your brain around the rejection part. You don't always hear back. And when you don't hear back and you watch the show and you say, oh, that's the person they picked. Well, let me see why. And I kind of look and I study. Maybe it was my look. Maybe it wasn't my look. It was the way I delivered. But we always we feel that rejection, but it shouldn't bring people down. I always suggest to actors, don't let, you are worth it. You're good enough. It just may be just one slight thing in the eyes of a casting director. You weren't exactly the look for it, but it wasn't because of your lack of ability. If that makes sense. So, I mean,
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, I remember watching this scene in How I Met Your Mother once, and there was this actor talking to Ted Mosby, and she was saying, one of the best pieces of advice I could give you is try and go off script if you can sometimes. Is that a sort of real, because I always wanted to ask it to someone, but is that a sort of a real scenario that's sometimes a good idea? Is that sometimes impress directors or producers, creative writers?
That's a great question. I'm at a point right now that I'm doing more of that than not. So many times they ask for maybe 1 take, 2 takes, sometimes 3 takes. And that's when you utilize that tool. You go off cuff a little bit and not get too crazy, because I don't want to see too crazy. But yeah, sometimes, doing it a different way. They want to see, because they're not even sure. Remember the movie or the series or whatever project it is hasn't hit the screen yet. So they really don't know what it's going to look like. But sometimes I've heard stories. I'm a big fan of Ray Abruzzo. He was on Sopranos. He said that when he did his audition, he said, instead of Versailles, like Versailles in France, he said Versailles. And that's how he delivered his line. And David Chase, who was director of Sopranos, said, I love it. He would have never thought that delivering that line made more sense to do it like that than not to do it. So yeah, to go off script a little bit is very important nowadays, because it differentiates you from all the thousands of people who are doing these auditions. So yeah, I guarantee that that's a great advice to give to somebody doing an audition. If you're doing multiple takes, do it differently and go off key a little bit, off cuff. Yeah.
Brilliant. Just quickly before we move on to the Cobra Kais and the Ozarks, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received as an actor coming up?
Stay humble. And that's hard sometimes, because sometimes we get a little big head. You're attached to something like, oh my gosh, but then you forget where you came from. When you were just at a cattle call with thousands of other people, auditioning without an agent, sending in headshots to people just to hope you can get an opportunity. But just staying humble. And I love to stay connected to fan base, because the fans, no matter how big or small you are, they're the ones who are the wind carrying, behind your sails. Once that's gone, as an actor, you're not marketable anymore. Yeah, you have ability, and people saw how many times you see people like, oh my gosh, what happened to them? They were a star 30 years ago, and what happened to them? I feel it's very important to stay connected to the fans as much as possible. And I know sometimes like Dwayne Johnson cannot speak to every person on the planet that's looking to send them an email, right? But if you can, sometimes dip back in there and at least show people, because we're humans. We're human. We struggle just like everybody else. This COVID has taught us this, right? To stay humble. It doesn't matter who you are on this planet. We're mortal. We're vulnerable. So, on a human level, be humble. Be kind.
Yeah, it's just a question for me. Sorry, Charlie. Just as before we move on to Cobra Kai, it's just a question, Rick. Do you, sort of, when you're watching films, do you ever see some things that you could sort of like pick up on and think that should have been differently? I mean, for me, it's like when you watch a horror film and there's the cliche of when they're being chased and someone falls over. It's just something like that. Do you ever pick on stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. I pick it apart, because there's so many other ways that something could have gone. Like Star Wars, there's a great example. I mean, you can look at the canon, and then you look at how Disney put a spin on it. And I'm more old school. I like the George Lucas way of delivering, and how I would do it, as opposed to how I see it on the screen today. But at the end of the day, the writers, they these guys, the directors, know exactly how they want it. And even when I did my scene in Cobra Kai, I did it a couple of ways, and we don't always see it until you guys see it. And it's like, oh, okay, they picked that way. I mean, they must have done my scene 50 times. We were there all day long just for that one scene I did. And they did change it a little bit. There were some lines that they didn't put in there that I had said, but I was very happy overall with the outcome. Oftentimes, artists don't always see the entire. You're either on the editor's floor or you're in the deleted scenes at the end of the DVD. But I was blessed to have had most of my scene there. But yeah, I do sometimes see myself picking apart scenes and like, oh, I would have done a little differently, or I would have done the same. I agree sometimes.
I think we're going to move on to Cobra Kai now. I think me and Charlie was actually speaking about this yesterday when he told me that we was having you on. Your scene, we didn't realise how big of an actual scene it was, and the words you said, it was just amazing, just what you said. And I think at the end we might get you to sort of recreate it a little bit again, because it was just such a brilliant scene, and it was just one filled with passion, and you could tell. And I know Charlie, there's a joke, there's quite a couple of rumours going around about who you really are in the series. Are you Miguel's dad? We don't know. You know, it was a good scene, and from us as fans, we could just sense that. So yeah,
it was an incredible scene. I was so pleased to have been part of. I'm just glad to be part of the journey, and the big three know it. The writers and Ralph and Billy, they know that we are all of us who are the co-stars of the show are very blessed to be part of a small part of a grand vision. And how the big three write this, I mean, we understand that the show is about, right? It's about Billy and Ralph. It's about Daniel and Johnny. And then we have the secondary characters, the teenagers with the fights. And then all of us that we have our little story arcs or our co-star parts, it adds to the flavor of the show. And we all have an intensity that we have to kind of match up there. That makes sense, right? So that's kind of when we bring in our parts, and it doesn't matter who we are on the show. It could be Susan Gallagher as Homeless Lynn. It could be Matt Lewis. Could be, Matt Borlengi. The Pawn Shop Guy. All of us, Aaron Danger, all of us have to bring that same energy and intensity to keep it level, right? And I was really pleased the way it came out. I did want to bring in a little gritty New York type of accent, so I really laid it on thick there. But it was cool because it was almost like a mic drop situation. That was the very beginning. It was to tell the story that now the whole town is up in an uproar because of karate. And I was kind of like the linchpin bullhorn type of person saying, you reap what you sow, LaRusso. It's your fault. Getting back to that, he's been the bad guy this whole time. And people are kind of misunderstanding him, but they're just angry. Now, where that leads me, my character in the show, we don't even know. I mean, there's so many secrets out there. We don't even know if we come back. We don't. Those are all up to the writers in the writers' room. So I hope to be back. We'll see.
Definitely. I mean, the big three have been very good at that, and they keep it secret. So when with other shows, the spoilers get out, and it's pretty annoying because people want to ruin it. But with the big three, I've not seen a single spoiler on any season, which has been fantastic. Just on that scene, it is such a great scene, the school meeting scene. Just before that, I don't know if you remember, but I think you will. But I heard you was a real bully. When Daniel was talking about karate, that was just a great moment. Paying homage to the video.
Well, I'll let you guys in on something. I think I mentioned this at another podcast. I did say this because there was one podcast I had done. It was just an audio, but something you guys didn't know. Now, when you hear somebody saying, "Whatever happened to that neckbeard teacher who attacked all the kids?" talking about Stingray, that was supposed to be me. That was my line. And they had another scene with me, getting angry, getting up, and getting the whole crowd behind me. So those kind of scenes were deleted from it. But I was kind of the rebel rouser there, in fact. But I called out Stingray right there on the red carpet, and he didn't come out. But we know he's kind of he's out of the loop there in the show. But it was a lot of fun. It was an honor working with Ralph and Billy and them, especially Ralph. I felt horrible because, I said, I used, to your point, Charlie, when we're talking about, do we go to script or we go off script? So when I said that Miyagi crap, that wasn't how it was supposed to be said. And I took that chance. And I believe maybe that helped me I don't know, but I did it because it was kind of, in my mind, being a big fan of the Karate Kid, that was like an Easter egg. Because when the first movie, when they were talking about Mr. Miyagi, even Daniel's character said, Mr. Miyagi. He goes, Miyagi. Here's a funny story. So as I did the scene, after like the 40th take, 50th take, and then because they wanted different views, different angles, I felt bad because I'm yelling at I love Ralph Macchio as an actor. I respect him totally. And I'm screaming at him constantly like this. We're about 10 feet apart. And when I'm saying Miyagi crap, at the very end, he had to break the ice and he said, Miyagi. So you don't see that also in the show, but he's telling me, and I'm like, complete respect to Pat Morita, because we wouldn't be here in the show if it wasn't for Pat Morita and his brilliant performances, Mr. Miyagi. So I have complete respect for him and the whole Miyagi verse. But it was called for, that scene, and it added to that intensity. So it was really cool. I even saw on YouTube there's there's something going around. I saw it's like 24,000 views of that scene. It's called Aftermath, was my episode. And they have that one scene that kind of set the stage for the whole show, for the whole season 3, was that intense scene. And I was honored to be part of that, man. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just a quick question, just on the actors, Ralph, William, and obviously Martin. From their films, go individually, because I know some are in the same film. For you, on each of them actors, what is your favourite film that they have been in?
Well, Ralph, obviously. Well, I love The Karate Kid. I mean, I went to see it when I was a kid in the movie theater, so that kind of started with him. Billy, I mean, Billy's always been a bad guy. He was in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. He's been so many different shows, and again, being typecast the way they have been, it's great to be typecast and not cast at all. So just being working actor in the business over all these years, I tip my hat to them, because it is not easy. I did it later on in my life. These guys have been doing it since they were young. And I just loved all their shows, to be honest with you. They brought their A game to every one of their projects. So
what I love about the Cobra Kai series, New Testaments as well, is the way they pay homage to the OG Karate, the Karate Kid, characters as well, which I think is brilliant. Like, there's even like Karate Kid 2, the young kid who was on the Typhoon and top, and Daniel Saves her, she featured in season 3. I thought that was a great touch. It's just brilliant how they pay homage as well with Easter eggs and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tell you, the writers, those guys, I mean, Josh Hayden and John Hurwitz, they are the magic behind those guys. I mean, can you imagine when they're in their writing room, scrumming together, coming up with these ideas and these thoughts? Talk about paying proper homage. They do it in such a way that, you've seen shows or reboots and you're like, oh, that's kind of cheesy the way they rushed it through there. These guys did it in such a way. I mean, I teared up when, like, Daniel was reading the last letters of Miyagi, right, with Kumiko.
Yeah.
When they show the girl again, he saved her and she saved him, right, from the car company. That was so brilliantly put together. But I don't think there's anybody else out there right now that can write like these guys. That's why this show is so special. And when we kind of knew early on, even when it was on YouTube, we knew that there was like lightning in a bottle. These guys knew they had something special here, and that's what. These guys behind the scenes writing this show are the true stars of the show, to be honest with you, because nobody else could have written it that way. Ralph says it in interviews all the time. He's been approached for years with different plots and this and that, and he refused because they didn't pay it proper homage, and these three did, and that's why this is the #1 show, and it will be for a long time on Netflix.
Definitely.
Yeah, just as Charlie said, it was crazy because me and my dad are huge Karate Kid fans. It's weird to think, obviously, I was not born when that film was made, but no joke, I must watch that film about 5 times a week. I know all the words. I say it with my dad, and on the film when he reunites with Kumiko, I looked to my left, and my dad's sobbing, and he's like, he's in tears because it just has that effect, and you don't realise sort of just how amazing it is. And like he said, when he saw the girl who saved him, when she was sat next to Kumiko, with Dad was like, that's the girl who he saved, and it's just incredible. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, it's a very nostalgic moment when guys my age and your dad's age, we watch these shows. It brings you back to that magical moment, because most of the time these were blockbuster hits for the summertime. So when it was always a thing that when school was over here in the United States, summer school, there's no summer school, you're off for the summer and you're looking forward to those big hits, and it brings you back to those teenage years of innocence before you get to pay bills and you just go to the beach and relax and have fun with your friends. Karate Kid was part of that, part of all of us. And now going back to seeing how these guys went through their life and where they are now, but going back and forth and seeing these old characters in the Miyagi verse is just unreal, and it's brilliant how they did put them all together. And I'm curious to see how they're going to continue. But they keep raising the bar, as you can see, right? They're raising the bar high.
Definitely.
It's quite funny as well, and Charlie knows this. It's just because of the Karate Kid as well. It's from the original when Daniel and Ali go on the date and they do all the arcade games and everything, and that is literally how I go on every first date. I just send the person I'm dating at the time. I sent them that video and we're like, this is what we're going to do. Because it's just incredible, with a mini golf and, they're playing the games and
it's so awesome.
Amazing.
It's something that doesn't go away. I mean, you can still picture yourself going to mini golf, going to an arcade, even though you have better game systems at home nowadays, but just that innocent fun, getting out there and just doing that type of stuff is timeless, right? It can traverse from when I was a kid to you guys, young guys. You can picture yourself having a great time doing that, right? So
100%.
Indeed.
What's your favorite scene from Cobra Kai?
Favorite scene, probably when John Kreese's character comes back and you see him light the cigar and he says the real story has only just begun. Right there you get chills, man, because it's like, wow, awesome. He doesn't have to say much, right? Martin Kove is just such a consummate actor. I wish I had gotten a chance to meet him. I didn't get a chance to meet him because he was still filming when we were doing the rap party and they were filming the last episode. But he is fantastic. And his son Jesse's a great kid too, man. Really nice family, great folks.
What's some of the theory? Have you seen some theories from your characters? So like we said, we've seen the Miguel Diaz theory. Have you seen some theories about your character?
Indeed. Well, it was kind of interesting because I had to keep that. We all sign non-disclosure agreements legally with the show that we can't talk about it. So even if I wanted to say something about the Miguel character and the father character, I couldn't say anything. Who I was, I could have been a guy flipping a pizza for all anybody knew, and I couldn't say anything. We're not allowed to. But it adds to the suspense of the fan base looking at theories, and the big three, they do a lot of fanfare. They like it. They love to hear the fans' responses and their fan theories. They love it, especially John Hurwitz. He's very engaging with his fan base on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. He usually checks in from time to time with people, and he loves the fan art and the theories. But I saw there's a lot of internet rumors about me still out there. I see things to this day, and who knows? I mean, there's one thing I can only say: a lot of our characters don't have last names, so anything's possible.
Exactly, it leaves that door open. One question I did want to ask, Rick: when you feature in these sort of TV shows like Cobra Kai and like Ozark that you're a fan of, it may sound like a weird question. Does it make it weird for you to watch it after?
Sometimes I don't watch them, to be honest with you. I don't watch all of them. But in the beginning, it felt a little weird. It was almost like weird in a fun way because, my kids, they've been with me, my wife and my kids, they were younger at the time when I first started, but it was almost like a family celebration. We'd all watch the show together to see how much I didn't get cut out of something. Oh, look, there I am real quick. There's a blur or something in the beginning. But especially with Cobra Kai, we did a big watch party in my house and my kids. I didn't get to see it first. It had shown here in my part of the United States at 3 a.m, and I was already. It was after New Year's, so I had a pretty rough night. So the next day, by the time I got to see it, my daughter's texting me, "Dad, come here. You got to see this. Let's watch it together because it's so good." The scene came out great, and I was afraid that they would cut a lot of it because I was told, some of the other actors told me too when they saw it, their scenes were edited. But I couldn't have asked for it to be done better that way. It came out perfect. They couldn't have done it any better. And I'm just so happy the way it came out, man.
You spoke about the shooting day and obviously 40 shots and stuff. What was the whole shooting experience like, and being on the set of Cobra Kai, a Karate Kid remake that you've been a fan of for years? What was that like?
Well, I wasn't around for the original one, so those directors are passed on. But this new crew here, they're like family, and they treat us all like professionals. And it didn't even feel like it was work. It was like we were hanging out with friends. They were so convivial, so warm. They spoke with us. It was crazy. Just spending the time with Ralph and Courtney, who plays his wife on the show. Just sitting down and just talking to them, chatting. Just as people, breaking bread, having lunch, just talking about every day and how the kids are and just how life is. It didn't feel like it was a day at the office. You know what I mean? It was so much fun, sharing some of their experiences, talking about how they got into the business as well, without nerding out or geeking out too much, because it happens too. You're sitting next to these stars. It's like, oh my gosh, amazing. But I couldn't have asked for a better experience out there, because I have been on multiple movie sets with some huge actors, but this particular set, it's like a dream come true, but it's so much fun. You don't want to go home. I tell you that. And the writers were just phenomenal. Such nice folks. The crew, these guys, from the makeup all the way to the set designers, everybody was like one big happy family. They really were.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with this show as well, like the OGs are brilliant in it as well. But also, what stood out to me and a lot of people is how good the kids are in it as well. Like Jolo and Jacob Bertram, Peyton List, how good they've been in it. And I think in the future, when this show ends, sadly it will end at some point. Like, don't want it to, but they are massive stars now. But could you see like a remake? I know it sounds a bit crazy now, but could you see like a remake like 30 years down the line with the sort of kids in it?
You know, I could, because it's weird. As when I see younger artists, I look at them like the way they do their performances. They're like old souls. Jolo, Jacob, Mary. These guys are like, oh my gosh, they brought it. And it didn't take 30 years to get that good. These guys are naturally talented people. They can really, you can put them in any movie, in any scene, and they'll knock it out of the park. That's how good they are. And, you know, if you want, I've heard it oftentimes, if you want the best results, you got to put in the right ingredients. And these guys, they're where they're supposed to be. But I can definitely see them doing other things. They can do, like you just mentioned, Charlie, they can do what would you say, like a remake? Yeah, absolutely. These guys are great. I love to follow them and continue to see how they evolve as actors too, because as you hear every day, there are a lot of people passing on, either COVID or older age. We've lost some great actors as of late, and the future industry stars are out there, and they're being developed right now. That you guys will be seeing when you're my age. You're going to go, wow, I remember when Jacob started in Cobra Kai, when Jolo started Cobra. Now he's an Academy Award winner doing this and that, right? So definitely. People, the baton is passed on, the torch is passed on to these folks, and I'm excited to see their future works.
100%. Yeah. Are you a team Miyagi-Do or Cobra Kai?
I don't want to say I'm like a gray Jedi. I'm a little of each. I do have a moral compass. But when it comes to the show, I'm Cobra Kai all the way.
Yeah, no mercy, as they say. When the show first came out, but obviously before we heard anything, and we knew there was kind of the Karate Kid. What were your thoughts on it when you first heard it? A lot of people were really scared that this is something you don't mess with. What were your thoughts when you first heard it?
I thought it was wonderful. To be honest with you, I thought that the only thing that we all kind of were a little skeptical about was the YouTube Red platform, because it was like, YouTube Red, what is that? You know. And I did see a lot of auditions coming my way in the early stages when season 1 was around. And, you know, you do them and you put them out, then you send them out and you get called, you don't get called. But that was kind of the only thing. But the people I knew who worked on set and who knew of the content and how it played out after the first season, I was a fan. And when season 3 came out and I got the audition for Roger, I was out of the country at the time. I had already sent in my audition. I didn't even know what was happening. I was out of internet and like cell phone range. I was on the islands out in St. Lucia. And all of a sudden I was at a higher peak and I got an email from my agent, Rick, congratulations, you were cast for Roger on Cobra. I said, what? I love that show. That's awesome. You know, it was crazy, a surreal moment, but I've loved the show from the beginning. I was a fan from the very start, man. Like you guys, you love The Mandalorian. Imagine getting cast for The Mandalorian. Yeah. Even as a robot, I'm happy to be part of this journey. It doesn't matter what I am. I mean, to be attached to the show, it's helped so many of us. And I can definitely speak on behalf of a lot of my cast members. It has opened up many doors for us that we have seen happening now. I mean, this project that I have been part of after shooting Cobra, because Cobra Kai, we shot that almost a year and a half ago, right? Yeah. And I've been attached to many other projects that haven't even come out yet because of that opportunity has afforded me. So I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Is that obviously Cobra? Sorry, Charlie. Cobra Kai is obviously action based and there's a lot of fighting, but the other side is some humor to it. And we look at Johnny, and it's just a question: Does Johnny really not know how to use the internet or a laptop?
I highly doubt it. No, well, in the show, yes, it's written that way, that he's kind of been in the bubble, like a time capsule, almost like an Austin Powers for all these years, and you take him out, you defrost him, and he's like, whoa, what's Facebook, hash browns, put hash brown. So yeah, the character is intentional, but of course, Billy Zabka is Nothing like that. But that goes to show you he's a great actor, right? He can really pull it off good.
How important do you think it is to have the mixture of funniness and humor as well as the most serious moments?
That's a good point. It's good to have some levity, some cheekiness to these things, because it can't just be all intense. You want to build that intense moment, but you got to kind of breathe and let it, fall out a little bit and just relax, shake it off. You have to have that sentimental moment too, that people want to cry a little bit too. But then it brings you up with something fun or something cool, or something badass about it. So it's like a symphony. Like, you have all the different things that make it a whole. You can't have it all intense. You can't put your foot on the pedal and be 0 to 90 the whole time. You have to let go and have the other moments to kind of make it what it is. I think that's why it's so successful. It has so many different aspects.
100%. What franchises do you think else we could expand on? From franchises you've seen that could be expanded on potentially in the near future?
Well, Star Wars is doing a great job about that. I can see. I was thinking about it the other day, because you see the prequels, right, and how you see the backstories. I can see, the Sam Jackson, the what was his character?
Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. I can see a backstory of Mace Windu. I can see Sidious, Darth Sidious. I can see him as a child. You can see that whole thing come about. All these different shows nowadays are doing it, and I don't want to say it's becoming redundant. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's purposeful and meaningful, and it doesn't kill the original, because that would just kill it for the viewers. And I hate to see when that happens. It's like, oh man, they did that. They could have just left it alone, But there's a lot of other ones. I see The Godfather. They're missing a part, in my opinion. And I was just talking to my wife about it. We're such avid lovers of that movie. From where Don Corleone, he becomes the Don after he kills the guy in the white suit, right? Up until like the 30s, we're missing that whole timeline. So I like to see a prequel for that. I'm a big, like I said, a Sopranos fan. So I'm so elated to see that they're doing The Many Saints of Newark. It's coming out on HBO Max this fall, with the great late James Gandolfini's son, Michael Gandolfini, reprising the role of his father as a child during the Newark riots in the 60s. That's going to be amazing. I wish I was part of that. I love The Sopranos. And to see that backstory and how he came to power, that's going to be meaningful. That's going to be huge, huge.
100%, definitely. Just a couple of final questions from me. The Obi-Wan series, I don't know if you've seen that as well, with Ewan McGregor returning and Hayden Christensen. What are your thoughts on that?
Dude, I am stoked. Like you guys, I'm like pumped. When I saw Hayden Christensen lying to it, I was like, what? Oh, I can't wait to see that. Ewan McGregor, you right there, you're looking at another stellar cast. Who's going to be the director of that one? I don't know if Favreau's doing that.
I think it might be the same.
It's not his.
Not the same one as Mandalorian, I think. I'm not sure. I know there's some writers from the Mandalorian involved in that. I'm not sure.
Because if Favreau has anything to do with it, I mean, he's a genius. I would love to work with him one day. But man, if it's anything going to be like the Mandalorian, we're talking they're raising the bar big, because they got Ewan McGregor, man. You can't have a better Obi-Wan than him. He's just fantastic. Oh,
definitely. There's also a quote mentioned in there that there's going to be a rematch of the century. With my other co-host Joe, we've had a little back and forth on how that would work. What sort of theories do you think how that would work?
Well, I think we would all kind of agree on the same thing. I think it would work just the same. It would be fine. But I mean, what do you think? You tell me.
A little suggestion. I feel like
I'll push it back to you guys.
He won't see it's Obi-Wan. I don't think he'll send him. I don't know. I think that would be on some sort of mission. He'll be dressed up as something, and they'll go back and forth. But I don't think he'll know it's him until after Darth Vader. That is. It's a little suggestion there, but because I don't know if they mentioned in the old films when they actually last met. I can't remember if they actually did not mention when they did last meet Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. So I'm not too sure. So I think it'd be something like that, to be honest with you. Or it could be like a flashback straight after the fight, maybe something like that.
Maybe some close calls, because that he's gonna. We know that Obi-Wan is gonna be on Tatooine. And does he leave the planet from time to time? I gotta say I don't think so, because he is really watching Luke. Right, that's his whole mission, is to safeguard Luke. So how that's going to play out, how many seasons can they really have? Will it just be one season? I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be brilliant. These guys were not talking about being selective. they're not destitute like that. They're going to be very selective, and I'm sure they know exactly what's happening, and it is purposeful, and it will be done great, and that's why they're aligning themselves to that project. So I'm sure they have I'm sure it was written in a way that it won't be cheesy. It's going to be well put together.
100%. Just a final question from me. If I was to ask you now, what would be your dream role in a film to have, or a TV series? What would you say to me?
I'm leaning more towards a series regular on like a gritty New York cop show. I love to be a detective kind of role, something like that. I just did a movie last year that I play somebody like that that's coming out. I can't talk about it yet because it hasn't been sold yet. It's in the process of being repackaged. That's what a lot of films do. So I can see myself as a private investigator, cop, gritty guy who struggles with that moral compass, that good and bad. I had a backstory. I wasn't always this angry kind of thing, I like to see myself in a project like that. Maybe an action movie, a full-out action movie. I can see myself doing something like that as well. And then maybe something, I don't want to say the mob thing, because that kind of ran its course a little bit, but something in that genre, that there's some kind of family struggle with a mob type of thing. I always found myself, I can picture myself in The Sopranos or The Godfather, something like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. So if you have anything else to add, Jack?
Yeah, I was just about to ask, obviously you mentioned about your dream role being in an investigate, something like that. Have you ever seen a film Sylvester Stallone, I See You, before? That just sprung to mind when you said that. I don't know if you've ever seen that one before.
No, I'm sorry, I did not see that, but I'm sure it was brilliant.
Yeah,
Stallone,
very good film.
Huge fan of his, but when did that come out? Was that one of his?
Yeah, it's quite an oldish, probably to his earlier days. It is a very good film. It's one I'd recommend. I think it's on Netflix in a minute. It's sort of he's chasing a serial killer.
Did he have like a beard and mustache? Or was he clean shaven?
I cannot remember. It's been a long time since I watched it, but
okay.
My final question was, apart from the films and series you've mentioned today, what would your top 3 films be? And then following on from that, your top 3 favorite actors. Who would you say they'd be? Top
3 films of all time. I'd say it's almost a tie between Star Wars and the Indiana Jones trilogies. Those are some of my favorite. On that side of it, film like, I'd say Godfather is right up there. Sopranos series on HBO is right there as well. I can't give top 3. I'm like top 2. That's just the way my brain processes. Yeah. And they're almost a tie to me. And then I have my favorite horror movies. I love classic horror movies.
Yeah.
You talked about Halloween. John Carpenter is by far one of my favorite directors of all time when it comes to the horror genre. The Fog, Halloween, Christine. I mean, all of these movies that he made. Prince of Darkness. I love John Carpenter. He's great.
Yeah.
Some great choices in there. Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this, Rick. It's been I've loved every minute of it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Again, thank you
for taking the time. It's been amazing.
Thank you ever so much. It's much.
Hey, maybe we can do it again sometime. I really appreciate. I'm humbled, and thank you to all your fans. Thank you for your support, and there's a lot more coming. Promise.
Definitely. You. Can we get a recreation of your line in Cobra Kai by any chance?
Oh, don't get all high and mighty, LaRusso. It was your student who Diaz. You reap what you sow.
Chills. Amazing.
Thank you, Rick. That means so much.
Thank you, guys.